Our devotional thought from the Old Testament today comes again from Exodus, and it deals with the subject of weak leadership. Now, there are many people that want to talk about leadership today, and they want to teach about leadership today. But when you begin to talk about strong leadership, immediately they're talking about cults, they're talking about corrupt businessmen. Anytime you put strength in leadership, people somehow want to see it through negative lenses. But I want you to notice the difference between weak and strong leadership. In our text today in Exodus 33, verses 1 and 2, we see that weak leadership, first of all, really responds to what the people want. Not what is best for the people, not what is right for the people, not what God says, but what the people want. Now look at verse 1 and 2. When the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, like most spiritual immaturity, impatience is a part of young baby Christians. They gathered around Aaron. Come on, they said, make us some gods who can lead us. Now, what about this God that's been walking with you? What about this God that's talking with Moses on the top of the mountain right now? But you know what? 40 days, out of sight, out of mind. Again, an aspect of spiritual immaturity. We don't know what has happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So again, they've thrown out Moses as a leader. They've thrown out God as their God. And now Aaron has his opportunity to show his quality. He has his opportunity to show who he is. He could stand there and say, now listen, Moses is coming back down, and Jehovah is our God. The God that delivered us with a mighty hand out of Egypt is our God. But instead he says, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. Now notice how weak this man is. Rather than stand up for Moses and rather than stand up for God, he says, okay, I'll do what you want. And then he makes it so nice. He says, none of the gold from you men, just the gold rings from your wives, your sons, and your daughters. Let's not bother the men. Let's not take no sacrifice on the part of the men. Again, he's just trying to be popular. Now, weak leadership then takes it a step farther. In verse 5, it says, Aaron saw how excited the people were. I mean, he makes this golden calf for them, and they're excited about the golden calf. So he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. And he's actually leading these people now in idolatry. He builds an altar for worship, and he says, tomorrow we're going to celebrate before this new God that we have made. But what again? He's responding to what the people desire and is responding to the excitement of the people. Now, the problem with that is when leaders follow the people rather than leaders leading. Leaders should follow God. And then Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. You should be able to look past us and see that we're following God. But rather than do any of that, the people now get out of control. Exodus 32, verse 6. The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings to the idol. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking and indulged in every pagan revelry. Notice, pagan revelry. Their entire celebration was pagan revelry. Probably a great deal of sex involved in that also. There usually is a lot of sex involved in demonic worship. Now, verse 25, Moses comes back down the mountain with Joshua. And verse 25, Moses saw that Aaron had let the people get completely out of control, much to the amusement of their enemies. Egypt was watching. The Canaanites were watching. The Ammonites were watching. The Edomites were watching. The people were totally out of control. And all of their enemies were just amused by it. Before, when they worshiped God, their enemies feared them. Now their enemies mocked them. Now, beloved, the next thing that has to happen is very, very difficult. Moses says, who's on the Lord's side? Who is not going to worship this calf? Who's on the Lord's side? Strap a sword on your side. And the next thing that happens is the Levites begin to move through the camp, and 3,000 people die that day by the sword of the Levites. And the Levites are thus ordained for the ministry because they put God first. Now, beloved, notice what has to happen. When weak leadership has just gone along with the people and worked at making the people happy, strong leadership has to come in and get control and clean up the mess. Strong leadership has to be the bad guy. Now, beloved, in our families, parents, it's not our job to be our children's best friend. It's our job to be their parents. It's not the pastor's job to be popular. It's the pastor's job and responsibility to be pastor. Now, beloved, at some point, you must recognize the difference between strong leadership and weak leadership and choose to follow strong leadership.